The sun was setting over the green world where human settlers had built their homes. The land was wide and full of tall trees that shined like silver in the evening light. Strange birds flew across the sky, and the air was filled with soft sounds of alien life. The settlers had lived there for 10 years, working hard to turn the wild land into a safe place for their families. Yet, there were still many things they did not understand about the world around them. Near the edge of the forest, something unusual moved among the tall grass. It was small, with scales that glimmered faintly as the sun touched them. Its wings were short and not yet strong enough to carry it high into the sky. The creature's eyes were bright like little fires, and smoke curled gently from its mouth as it breathed. It was a dragon hatchling, no larger than a cat, but to the settlers, it was a frightening sight. The villagers saw it first while gathering wood. They froze in fear, dropping their bundles and whispering among themselves. Everyone had heard old stories about wild beasts in the forest, and the small dragon seemed to fit those tales. Some said it would grow into a monster that could burn down the whole village. Others said even a young one could be deadly. Children were pulled indoors, and adults warned each other to stay away. They gave the hatchling only one name, Wild. But while most stayed away, one person did not. Her name was Myra. She was a human woman who had come to this world years ago, bringing with her a calm spirit and a heart that did not fear what others feared. She worked in the fields during the day and often wandered the forest in the evening, watching the strange life that filled it. To her, the new world was not only a place to survive but also a place to learn. When Myra first saw the hatchling, she did not feel the same fear that gripped the others. She stood still, her eyes resting on the little creature as it tried to hide among the grass. Its small body shook, not with anger but with weakness. Myra noticed its ribs moving sharply with each breath. It looked hungry and alone. She did not see a monster. She saw a lost child of the forest. The hatchling lifted its head and hissed when it noticed her. Its wings opened, though they were too small to frighten anyone. Its throat glowed faintly, a sign of fire deep inside, but Myra did not move back. She lowered herself slowly, kneeling so she would not tower over the small creature. Her voice was soft when she spoke, gentle enough to carry through the evening air without scaring it. "You are not wild," Myra whispered. "You are only alone." The hatchling tilted its head as if trying to understand. It did not leap at her, nor did it run. Instead, it stayed where it was, watching her with glowing eyes. Myra reached into the small pouch she always carried when she went into the forest. She pulled out a piece of dried fruit and held it in her open palm. The smell drifted toward the hatchling, and its nose twitched. For a long moment, nothing happened. The forest was quiet except for the distant sound of wind in the trees. Then the hatchling took a small step forward. Its claws pressed into the earth, its wings still half open as if ready to escape. It sniffed the air, hissed again, then moved closer. Myra kept her hand steady, not pulling away even when the creature's teeth brushed against her fingers. Finally, it took the fruit and chewed slowly, its eyes never leaving hers. From a distance, the settlers who had followed Myra watched in shock. They whispered to each other, unable to believe what they were seeing. The woman was feeding the dragon hatchling with her bare hand, and the creature was not attacking her. Instead, it seemed calm, almost gentle. Some shook their heads, saying she was foolish and would regret it. Others stayed silent, wondering if they had judged the hatchling too quickly. Myra smiled as the little dragon finished the fruit. She did not reach out to touch it yet, knowing trust would take time. But in her heart, she already felt a bond forming. She could see in its eyes that it was not the wild beast everyone feared. It was only scared, hungry, and lost. The sun finally sank below the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple. The hatchling gave a small chirping sound, almost like a bird calling out at night. Then, with a weak flap of its wings, it settled down in the grass near Myra, no longer trying to hide. Myra stayed beside it, watching over the little creature as darkness slowly covered the land. In that moment, she knew her life was about to change. The settlers would never understand why she chose to care for the hatchling. They would call her reckless, even foolish. But Myra believed that what she had found was not danger. What she had found was trust waiting to grow. The strange discovery was not just a meeting between a woman and a dragon. It was the beginning of something far greater, something that would one day change the way the settlers saw the world around them. The next morning, the settlers gathered near the meeting hall. The story of the strange dragon hatchling spread quickly through the village. Men and women argued in low voices, worried that the small creature might bring danger to their homes. Some wanted to drive it away into the forest before it grew bigger. Others feared that harming it might bring more of its kind. Myra stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, listening to their words. She knew what they did not. She had seen the fear in the little dragon's eyes, the weakness in its body, and the hunger that had almost broken it. She could not see it as a threat. To her, it was a small life that needed care. Still, she did not speak loudly against the settlers. She only said she would return to the forest to see the creature again. Many shook their heads at her. Some warned her to be careful. Others muttered that she was too soft. Myra did not mind. She gathered food and water in her pouch and left the village as the sun rose. The forest was cool that morning. Mist curled between the tall trees, and the air smelled of damp earth. Myra walked slowly, her steps light so she would not frighten the animals around her. She reached the place where she had seen the hatchling the night before. For a moment, she feared it had gone. Then she noticed movement in the grass. Two bright eyes watched her carefully. The little dragon had not left. Its small wings twitched nervously, and a faint line of smoke rose from its mouth. When Myra stepped closer, it hissed, the sound sharp and thin. Its claws dug into the soil as if ready to fight or flee. Myra did not move fast. She lowered herself to the ground, sitting cross-legged so she would not seem like a hunter. From her pouch, she pulled another piece of food. This time it was soft bread. She placed it on the ground in front of her and pushed it slowly toward the hatchling. Then she waited. The hatchling's nose twitched as the smell reached it. It hissed again, but the sound was weaker, less certain. It crept forward step by step, stopping often as if testing her. When it reached the bread, it sniffed it and then, to Myra's surprise, lifted it carefully in its mouth. It chewed slowly, eyes still fixed on her face. Myra felt her heart lift. She whispered softly, though she knew it did not understand her words. "You are safe with me. No one will harm you." When the hatchling finished the bread, it gave a low chirping sound, the same sound Myra had heard the night before. It was not the sound of anger. It was almost like a call. Myra smiled, keeping her hands on her lap, showing she would not force herself on it. The dragon tilted its head, studying her. Then, with careful steps, it moved closer. Myra held her breath, not wanting to scare it away. The small creature reached her foot and sniffed at her boot. Its warm breath carried a faint smell of smoke. Myra stayed still, her eyes gentle, her heart beating fast. When the hatchling rubbed its head lightly against her boot, Myra knew the first wall of fear had fallen. She slowly moved her hand forward, palm open and empty. The dragon sniffed it, then pulled back, wings flicking nervously. Myra did not chase it. She let her hand rest there, waiting with patience. After a long pause, the hatchling stepped forward again. This time it touched its nose to her fingers. Myra's smile grew. She did not grab it, did not try to hold it. She only let it feel her warmth. For the first time, trust was forming between them. From the edge of the forest, hidden behind trees, two settlers had followed Myra to see what she was doing. They gasped when they saw the dragon touching her hand. To them, it was unthinkable. No one dared to go near such a creature. Yet here was Myra, sitting calmly as if she were greeting a harmless pet. The settlers hurried back to tell the others. Soon, more people would speak about what they saw. But Myra was not thinking about the village. Her eyes were only on the hatchling. The small dragon let out a tiny puff of smoke, but it was not a warning. It seemed almost playful, as if it was trying to show her what it could do. Myra laughed softly, the sound gentle in the still forest. She reached into her pouch again and gave it another bit of food. The dragon ate quickly, then sat down near her, its wings folding close to its body. The morning sun broke through the mist, casting light across them both. The forest felt calm, almost peaceful. Myra knew the creature was still frightened, still learning, but she also knew something important had happened. This was no longer just a chance meeting. This was the first real contact between them. The settlers might call the hatchling wild. They might warn her to stay away. But Myra had seen its true nature. It was not a beast waiting to bring fire and ruin. It was a young life reaching out for trust. As the dragon's bright eyes softened, Myra felt certain of one thing. This was the start of a bond that neither fear nor doubt could easily break. Days passed, and the bond between Myra and the hatchling grew little by little. Each morning, she left her home with a small pouch of food and walked into the forest. At first, the settlers mocked her, saying she was wasting her time on a dangerous beast. But Myra paid no mind to their words. She knew patience was the only way to earn the trust of a creature that had never known kindness. The hatchling began to wait for her at the edge of the forest. It no longer hid in the grass when she arrived. Instead, it chirped softly and flapped its small wings as if to greet her. The sound was sharp but cheerful, and it made Myra smile every time. She named it Ash, because of the little trails of smoke that puffed from its nose whenever it was excited. Myra always spoke gently to Ash, even though she knew he could not understand her words. Her voice carried warmth, and soon the hatchling began to respond not only to food but also to the sound of her call. When she said his name, he turned his head quickly, his eyes bright with recognition. It was as if he was learning the sound of her voice as a promise of safety. Ash was still small, but each day he grew a little stronger. His scales gleamed brighter in the sun, his wings stretched wider, and his tiny claws dug into the ground with more power. When he tried to fly, he leapt into the air only to stumble down again, landing clumsily at Myra's feet. Instead of being upset, Ash shook himself, chirped loudly, and tried again. Myra clapped her hands and laughed softly, always encouraging him. One morning, Myra brought a small bowl of water. She placed it before Ash, who sniffed at it curiously. At first, he licked it slowly, unsure of what it was. Then he began to drink eagerly, his throat moving quickly as he swallowed. Drops of water rolled down his chin and onto his scales. Myra knelt beside him, brushing the grass to soak up the spilled water. Ash nudged her hand with his head, his scales warm against her skin. It was the first time he had touched her on his own, without fear. That touch told Myra that the bond was real. Ash no longer saw her as a stranger. He saw her as something close, something safe. But while Myra was filled with joy, the settlers were filled with unease. From a distance, they watched her walking with the hatchling at her side. To them, it was still a wild beast. They whispered that one day it would turn on her. They warned their children to stay away from the forest. Some even begged Myra to stop feeding it, saying she was calling danger closer to the village. Myra listened politely but never agreed to their fears. She told them, "He is not wild. He only needs someone to care." Most of them did not believe her, but a few began to wonder if perhaps she was right. Ash continued to show signs of trust. When Myra sat in the grass, he curled near her legs like a pet resting at home. When she walked, he followed her steps, his claws clicking softly against the stones. If she left him for too long, he gave a small cry that echoed through the trees until she returned. Myra began to realize that Ash was not just a creature she was helping. He was becoming a true companion. One evening, as the sun set, Myra stayed longer in the forest. The air grew cooler, and the shadows stretched long across the ground. Ash sat beside her, watching the glowing sky. For the first time, Myra reached out her hand and gently touched his head. His scales were smooth and warm, like polished stone. Ash did not pull away. Instead, he leaned into her touch, closing his bright eyes. It was then Myra understood the depth of their bond. The hatchling trusted her completely. He was no longer a lost creature in the wild. He had chosen her as his own. That night, Myra returned to the village with Ash following at a distance. The settlers gasped when they saw the dragon walking so close to her without harm. Some stepped back in fear, but others could not take their eyes off the scene. It was clear that the small creature, once called wild and dangerous, now walked like a pet beside the human woman. The children whispered in awe, saying the dragon liked her more than the forest. The elders frowned, still worried about the future. But no one could deny what their eyes saw. The bond between Myra and Ash was real, and it was growing stronger with each day. When Myra entered her home that night, Ash settled at her doorstep, curling into a ball of warm scales and faint smoke. He kept watch while she rested, his glowing eyes scanning the night. The settlers who walked by saw this and shook their heads in disbelief. How could a wild creature act like a loyal guardian? The truth was simple. It was no longer only Myra who had chosen Ash. Ash had chosen Myra too. And in that choice, a new story began. It was not just about a woman and a dragon. It was about two lives, once strangers, now bound by trust and care. A bond that neither fear nor doubt could easily break. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Myra and Ash grew stronger with every sunrise. The hatchling was no longer weak and trembling as he had been when Myra first found him. His scales had grown brighter, his body heavier, and his wings stretched wider each day. Though still young, Ash was clearly becoming stronger, and that strength brought unease to the hearts of the settlers. At first, they only whispered when they saw Myra walking with Ash at her side. Children peered from behind fences, pointing with wonder, but their parents quickly pulled them back. Many adults avoided the paths Myra used, unwilling to risk meeting the dragon so close. Even when Ash curled peacefully beside her in the grass, the settlers could not believe he was harmless. One evening, a group of elders called a meeting in the village hall. The wooden building stood tall in the center of the settlement, its windows glowing with lamplight as the people gathered inside. Myra arrived with calm steps, though she could feel their eyes on her. She sat quietly as the room filled with worried voices. The first elder, a man with silver hair, stood and raised his hand. "This dragon," he said firmly, "may be small today, but tomorrow he will be large. He will have fire in his chest and strength in his wings. Do you think he will stay tame when he grows? No, he will be dangerous, and it will be too late for us to stop him." The crowd murmured in agreement. A woman added, "It is not safe for our children. Already they are curious. If one of them tries to touch the beast and it snaps, what then? Who will answer for that?" Myra listened without anger. When the voices grew quiet, she rose slowly. "Ash is not wild," she said in a clear voice. "I have spent many days with him. He does not harm. He follows me, trusts me, and waits for me. If he wished to hurt, he would have done so already. Instead, he stays by my side, gentle as a lamb." Her words did not convince them. The silver-haired elder shook his head. "You cannot know his heart. He is a creature of the forest. It is his nature to burn and destroy. That is what dragons do." Myra stood straighter. "Perhaps that is what you fear. But I see more than what you call nature. I see a mind that learns, a heart that feels. If you judge him only by what he may become, then you will never see what he already is." The hall filled with uneasy silence. Some looked away, unwilling to challenge Myra directly, but the fear in their eyes did not fade. The meeting ended without agreement, and Myra walked home alone beneath the night sky. When she reached her home, Ash was waiting by the doorway. He chirped happily at the sight of her, smoke curling from his nose. Myra knelt beside him and stroked his head, whispering, "They do not see you as I do. But I will not leave you." Ash pressed close to her, his scales warm against her hand, as if he understood her words. The next days were no easier. Settlers crossed the street when Myra passed with Ash. Mothers pulled their children inside. Some even spoke harshly to her, saying she was risking everyone's safety. Myra did not shout back. She only kept walking, Ash following faithfully behind her. Yet not everyone was against her. A few children, braver than their parents, watched with wide eyes as Ash played in the grass. They whispered to each other about his bright scales and his soft chirps. One little boy even waved at Ash from behind a fence. To Myra's surprise, Ash tilted his head and gave a happy cry in return, making the boy laugh. But when the boy's mother saw, she rushed him away with fear in her face. The more Ash grew, the more the settler's fear deepened. His wings stretched taller than Myra's shoulders now, and when he tested them, strong gusts of wind rolled across the fields. His fire was no longer just a faint glow. Sometimes when he sneezed, sparks flew into the air. To Myra, these were signs of health and growth. To the settlers, they were signs of danger. One afternoon, the elders came again to her home. They stood outside her door, unwilling to step closer while Ash rested nearby. The silver-haired elder spoke firmly. "Myra, this must end. You cannot keep the beast. Release it into the wild, or one day we will all pay the price." Myra stepped forward, her eyes calm but steady. "I will not release him. He has chosen me, and I have chosen him. He is not a beast to me. He is a friend. If you cannot see that, then perhaps you have forgotten what it means to live with trust." The elders left without answering, but Myra knew they would not stop their warnings. The village was divided now. Some whispered that Myra had lost her mind. Others, though fewer, began to wonder if perhaps she was right, for the dragon had never harmed anyone despite the fear that surrounded him. That night, as Ash slept beside her door, Myra gazed at the stars above. She thought of the settler's fear, heavy and sharp like a shadow over her heart. But then she looked down at Ash, curled peacefully with his wings folded and smoke rising like a soft dream. She touched his head and whispered, "No matter what they say, I will not leave you." And in the quiet of that night, Myra knew her choice was firm. She would face the fear of the villagers. She would stand between them and Ash if she had to. For the bond they had built was worth more than the doubts of the world. The night was calm when the danger came. The village lay silent under the silver light of the moons, the fields quiet except for the soft song of insects. Families slept in their homes, and the guards at the watchtower leaned on their spears, thinking the night would pass without trouble. But deep within the forest, something stirred. Far from the fields, a predator roamed. It was larger than any beast the settlers had seen before, a creature with thick hide and jaws strong enough to break wood. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and its growl rumbled like thunder across the ground. For weeks, it had hunted far from the village, but now hunger drove it closer. The smell of livestock carried through the night, guiding it toward the fences of the settlement. Myra sat awake in her home, unable to rest. Ash lay curled by her doorway, his tail twitching in his sleep. She stroked his scales gently, her heart still heavy with the words of the elders. Though she trusted Ash, she could not ignore the fear of the settlers. She wondered how long they would tolerate his presence before their fear turned into action. Her thoughts broke when Ash suddenly lifted his head. His eyes glowed bright, and his nostrils flared as he sniffed the air. A low growl rose from his throat. Myra frowned, leaning closer. "What is it, Ash?" she whispered. Before she could rise, a scream tore through the night. It came from the far end of the village, sharp and full of terror. Dogs barked wildly, and bells rang as guards shouted. Myra rushed outside, her eyes wide. Smoke curled from Ash's mouth as he spread his wings, ready to run. The predator had broken through the livestock fence. Goats and sheep scattered in panic as the beast snapped its jaws, tearing wood apart as if it were dry straw. The guards rushed forward with spears, but their weapons bounced off its thick hide. The creature roared, striking one man aside with its claw. The village filled with cries of fear. Myra felt her heart pound. The elders had always warned her about danger, but it was not Ash who brought it. It was this predator, a true beast of the wild. Without thinking, she ran toward the sound, and Ash leapt after her. When they reached the fields, Myra saw families pulling children into their homes. Flames lit torches along the fences, throwing long shadows across the ground. The predator roared again, its massive body towering over the guards. Spears broke, shields cracked, and the men began to fall back. Myra froze, her eyes locked on the beast. She wanted to help, but what could she do against such power? Before fear could stop her, Ash ran past her. His small body seemed almost fragile against the size of the predator, but his courage was fierce. The settlers gasped when they saw the young dragon leap into the fight. Ash spread his wings wide, standing tall before the beast. He let out a cry that rang across the field, sharp and strong. Smoke poured from his mouth, and sparks danced in the night air. The predator turned its glowing eyes on him, growling low as if mocking the small challenger. It lunged, jaws snapping. Myra shouted in fear, but Ash did not run. He rolled aside, his claws striking the beast's leg. Though he was smaller, his strike left a shallow cut across the thick hide. The predator roared in anger, swinging its tail and sending Ash tumbling across the dirt. Myra's breath caught, but Ash quickly rose. His wings flared again, and this time fire burst from his throat. It was not large, but it was enough. Flames struck the predator's face, making it stumble back with a furious howl. The villagers gasped in shock. For the first time, they saw the fire that burned inside the young dragon. The predator roared again and charged, but Ash was faster. He darted around it, spitting sparks and flame, biting at its legs. Each strike drove the beast back step by step. The guards, seeing their chance, rushed forward to help, stabbing at its exposed side. Together, man and dragon fought side by side, forcing the predator to retreat toward the trees. With one final burst of fire, Ash drove it back into the forest. The beast gave a furious cry before vanishing into the shadows, the sound fading into the distance. Silence fell over the field, broken only by the crackle of torches and the heavy breaths of the villagers. Ash stood in the center of the field, smoke rising from his mouth, his wings spread wide. His scales gleamed in the firelight, his eyes sharp and proud. Though small, he looked like a guardian carved from flame and courage. Myra ran to him and knelt at his side. She placed her hands on his warm scales, tears filling her eyes. "You saved us," she whispered, her voice shaking with both pride and relief. Ash leaned against her, chirping softly, his fire fading into faint smoke. The settlers gathered slowly, their fear mixed with awe. They had seen the young dragon risk his life for theirs. The creature they had called wild, dangerous, and untrustworthy had stood as their protector when no one else could. For the first time, the village did not look at Ash with only fear. They looked at him with wonder. Some even bowed their heads in respect, though no words were spoken. Myra stood with Ash beside her, her heart steady. She knew the fight was not only against the predator but also against doubt. Tonight, Ash had shown his true nature, and the settlers had witnessed it with their own eyes. The true danger had appeared, and it was not the dragon. It was the wild that surrounded them, a wild they could not face alone. But with Ash, they had hope. The sun rose slowly over the village the morning after the attack. Birds sang in the trees, and the wind moved softly through the tall grass. The settlers began to step outside their homes, cautious and quiet. They looked around at the fields where the predator had attacked. The damage was small thanks to Ash's bravery, but the fear lingered in their minds. Myra walked through the village with Ash by her side. His wings, now folded neatly against his back, shone with a soft golden light in the early sunlight. Children watched from behind fences, whispering excitedly, and even the elders stared in silence. No one spoke at first. They only watched the young dragon, amazed at what he had done. Finally, the silver-haired elder, the same man who had warned Myra before, stepped forward. He looked at Ash carefully, then at Myra. "It seems," he said slowly, "that the creature we feared has become our protector." Myra smiled, though her eyes stayed on Ash. "He is not just a protector," she said. "He is a friend. He chose to defend us, not out of duty, but because he cares." The villagers murmured among themselves. Some were still unsure. They had feared the dragon for so long that seeing him act bravely was hard to accept. But as the day passed, more and more began to approach. Children, in particular, felt drawn to Ash. They ran to the fields with cautious steps, calling his name softly. Ash chirped back, happy to see them. He let them pet his scales gently, chirping in delight whenever they laughed. Even the adults began to see a new side of the hatchling. They noticed that he was careful not to hurt anyone, that he responded to Myra's calls, and that his small bursts of fire were controlled and precise. Slowly, the villagers started to understand that Ash was not the wild beast they had imagined. Myra spent the morning showing Ash's gentle nature to everyone. She demonstrated how he could play, rest, and even help with small tasks, like carrying wood or moving fallen branches. The villagers began to whisper about how clever he was. "He is learning," one elder said quietly. "Perhaps more than we expected." By afternoon, a group of children had brought small toys and trinkets from their homes to play with Ash. He sniffed each one carefully, then gently nudged them with his nose. His eyes sparkled as the children laughed, showing that he enjoyed their company. Myra watched with pride. The little dragon, once feared and misunderstood, was now slowly becoming a part of their lives. Later, Myra and Ash walked to the edge of the village. The fields stretched far, dotted with trees and streams. Myra knelt beside him, brushing her hand over his scales. Ash nuzzled her, chirping softly as if to say he understood everything. "You were brave last night," she whispered. "You showed them what you are. You are not wild. You are a hero." Ash looked up at her, eyes bright and proud. For a moment, it seemed as if he understood every word. He chirped again, his tiny wings twitching in excitement. Myra laughed softly, happy that he could share in her joy. By evening, the village had begun to change. The people no longer whispered only about fear. They told stories of how Ash had driven the predator away. Children begged their parents to let them play near him, and some even asked if they could help feed him. The elders still watched carefully, but they could no longer deny that the young dragon had saved their homes. That night, Myra sat outside her house with Ash curled beside her. The stars shone brightly, and the moons reflected in Ash's glowing eyes. Myra stroked his head and whispered, "You have shown them who you really are. They will remember this night, and so will we." Ash closed his eyes, smoke curling gently from his nose, and Myra knew he felt safe. He had chosen her, and she had chosen him. Together, they had faced danger and come through stronger than ever. The villagers slept peacefully that night, for the first time feeling safe knowing Ash watched over them. Myra realized that their fear of the dragon had turned into respect and admiration. She also understood that trust, once given, could grow stronger than fear. In the quiet of the night, Myra whispered to Ash again, "You are more than just a dragon, Ash. You are a hero. And together, we will face whatever comes next." Ash chirped softly in reply, curling even closer, ready for whatever the future might bring. For the first time, Myra felt truly hopeful. The young dragon, once called wild and dangerous, had become a symbol of courage. Together, human and dragon had shown that even in a world of fear, trust and bravery could shine brighter than any danger. And so, in the heart of the village, Ash stood as a hero in scales, a living reminder that courage could come in the smallest and most unexpected forms. The village woke to a quiet morning filled with sunlight and gentle wind. The air smelled of fresh grass and blooming flowers, and the settlers moved through the streets with a new calmness. The predator had not returned, and the villagers no longer whispered only about fear. Ash, the young dragon, had become a part of their lives. Myra stepped outside her home, Ash at her side. The dragon's scales glimmered softly in the early light, and his wings stretched gracefully. Children ran to greet him, their laughter filling the air. Ash chirped and flapped his wings lightly, pleased to see their excitement. He sniffed the ground and nudged their hands, careful not to hurt them. Myra watched, smiling, knowing that the bond she had built with him had begun to influence everyone around them. The elders gathered once more in the village square. This time, their expressions were different. The fear that had always shadowed their faces was replaced with respect and wonder. The silver-haired elder stepped forward and addressed the crowd. Yesterday, we saw bravery in its purest form. A creature we called wild has shown courage that saved us all. Perhaps we judged too quickly. The villagers murmured in agreement. Some nodded their heads, still cautious but beginning to understand. Myra approached the elders and bowed slightly. Ash is more than a creature of the forest, she said. He is a friend, a companion, and a protector. If we care for him and teach him, he can live with us, not against us. The elders looked at each other, and finally, one spoke with a quiet smile. Then let it be so. Let the dragon be a part of the village, watched over by Myra and guided by us all. The villagers cheered softly, some clapping, while others simply stood in awe. The fear that had once held them tight began to lift like morning mist. Ash chirped happily at the sound of their voices. He walked to Myra and nuzzled her hand, his scales warm under her fingers. The children ran closer, bringing small offerings of food and toys. The dragon sniffed each one, carefully examining them before nudging them gently back. He was playful now, not just brave. His small bursts of smoke curled into the air, harmless but magical in the sunlight. Myra watched him with pride. The little hatchling who had once been alone, frightened, and called wild had grown into a creature both brave and kind. And she knew that his growth was not just physical. Ash had learned to trust, to care, and to share his courage with others. As the days passed, life in the village changed. The settlers built a small area for Ash near Myra's home. There was a shaded perch where he could rest and watch over the fields, and a small pool where he could drink and bathe. Children often played near him under Myra's supervision, learning how to interact with the dragon without fear. Even the elders took turns observing him, impressed by his intelligence and gentle nature. One afternoon, Myra took Ash to the edge of the forest. The wind rustled through the trees, and the sunlight created patterns on the ground. Ash stretched his wings and chirped excitedly. Myra knelt beside him, her hand resting on his warm scales. "You have done well, Ash," she whispered. "You are not just my companion. You are a bridge between us and the world we share." Ash responded with a soft chirp, leaning into her hand. Myra laughed softly, her heart light. The bond they had built was strong and unbreakable. Together, they had faced danger, doubt, and fear. Together, they had changed the way the villagers saw not only Ash but also the possibility of trust between humans and creatures. That evening, as the sun set, Myra and Ash returned to the village. Families gathered outside their homes, children waving and calling out his name. Even the elders nodded respectfully as Ash passed. He chirped back, spreading his wings briefly in a graceful gesture. The villagers had begun to see him not as a threat, but as a friend, a guardian, and a symbol of courage. Myra watched the scene with quiet satisfaction. The dragon hatchling, once called wild, had shown everyone that kindness and bravery could overcome fear. She knew that their journey together was only beginning. Many challenges would come, as they always do in a world filled with the unknown. But Myra was confident that as long as they faced them together, nothing could break their bond. That night, Myra sat outside with Ash curled beside her, smoke rising softly from his nose in the gentle light of the moons. The village was calm and safe, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of life. Myra stroked Ash's head and whispered, "We have begun a new story, my friend. A story of trust, courage, and friendship. Together, we will face every tomorrow." Ash chirped softly, nuzzling her hand. The warmth of his scales, the softness of his breath, and the gentle glow of his eyes reminded Myra of the power of care and trust. What had started as a frightened little hatchling had become a hero, a friend, and a symbol of hope for the entire village. In the heart of the settlement, humans and dragon now lived together in harmony. Fear had turned to respect, and danger had turned to trust. Myra smiled, knowing that this new beginning was only the first chapter in a story that would continue for years to come, a story where courage, kindness, and friendship could overcome even the greatest challenges. The dragon, once wild and alone, had found his home. And the human who had believed in him had found a friend unlike any other. Together, they would shape the future of the village, proving that trust and bravery could change the world.